Hi, welcome back. Now, previously we actually looked at how to read data into R, import data, and then also export data from R. So as part of the practice, I've provided a code which is named Getting Data into R, okay, which you have it available for you on Canvas. Again, take advantage of that. But just to go through, that code quickly with you, you can just, or what you can do is just copy all and then paste it in your R, okay? Now, once you have pasted it in R, first of all, the first part of the code is actually looking at how to import a text file. Now, previously, we actually looked at how to import a CSV file, which is the most common way to import data into R. But what if your data is in a text file? Now, an example of a text file data is, for instance, this data is a text file data, okay? It's in the form of a text file. So how do I read this data into R for analysis, okay? So in order to do that, you are going to actually use the function called read.table, okay? The read.table function allows you to be able to read a text file data, okay? So we are going to be able to read this particular data, which you have it available, which is my prac data. So before then, you have to first of all look for the location of that data set, okay? So the location is here. So let me copy the location. And then let me paste the location here, okay? And once I paste the location, I have to use the /, okay? So use the /. Make sure you change all the backslash to /, depending on the PC you are using. Some PC might accept the backslash, but what I know is Windows usually uses the /. Okay, then /, the data name is mine _ pract _ data dot text. Now remember to bring the dot text because that is where it is able to locate the data as a text file and then it's able to import it. So now the first of all in read.table, you get the file path, okay, where the data is located, which I have copied the location. Then now you have to indicate that if your data is already having heading, for instance, this particular data, it's already have heading, okay? It has some headings already. So what we are going to actually tell R is, okay, the data already have header. So the header of the data equal F means false. Okay, that's if the data does not have any heading. Okay, and if that's the case, if the data does not have any heading, then you have to now add the headings of the data. Okay, the column names of the data. So you have call.names equal, then you put it in a quotation with comments, okay, to separate each of the columns, and then now you close the bracket, okay? So that's the other part of the code. So once you are done, you just have to run it. Now, usually once you run a text file, usually you are going to see some kind of these warnings, but that's okay. The data have been run because we can see the data in the environment, right? It's a 4 observation and 7 variables. So in order for us to know the data, now remember we name the data as what? Test.file data, okay? So we can copy that one. We can highlight on that, and then we can just highlight and then run it, okay? And then that gives us the data. Or we can, if you want to know the names, we can say, okay, give us the names of this particular data, and then we can run it. Okay, so this is the name of the data in which we have. Now, what if if you don't have headings of the data, that is where you indicate that, okay, I don't have the headings of the data, but then I want R for you to name the columns of the data set. So you give the column names to the data set, okay. Now, if you already have the heading of the data set, just as this data does, then all what you have to do is to tell R that, yes, the data is having a header. So in that case, we don't have to add any column headings, okay? So let us say, let's name this the text file data true, okay? Now we use the read.table, and then let us copy the same path. Okay, because it's the same data, and then place it here, replace it with this, okay? Then comma header equal T, which is true. It means we are telling how that the data is having a header, okay? So now let us run it. Again, we will have the warning sign, but that's okay. If you look at the environment, we have the data there, okay? Then we can actually, if you want to see the data, we can have test T file and test file data too, okay? And that's what we have here. We can highlight on it and then we can just run it. And if you want to know the names, we can have the names. Okay, okay, that's it. Now, also again, if we actually want to read a CSV file data, okay, now we already did before in our previous presentation where I did mention how to import CSV file data, okay? Now, to import this particular CSV file data uses the package which is called the read package. So, sorry, it uses the read package. So in order to use it, you have to make sure you activate or load that read package, okay, before you can use the read_CSV, okay. You have to always make sure you load it before you can actually use it. Now, if the CSV file, again, assuming if we want to use the CSV file for Iris, we just have to make sure we copy the location of Iris. So let me get to the location. So I click on Iris and I right click, and then I'm able to go to properties and then copy the location. So once I have copied the location, let me replace the location with this location. Okay. Okay. So what I did was now this one, okay, so this is the location I actually copied, but this location ends at the folder. But then I now have to read the Iris file itself. So I now have to bring iris.csv, okay, and then change all the / to, or the / to /. Okay, so now I'm able to read the Iris data, okay? So now let me read the Iris data. Now I'm able to read the Iris data, and I can say that, okay, give me the head of the data set, Iris_data. Okay, now it's, once I run that line, as the cursor blink on the line, I run it, and then it gives me the head of the data set, which is the first 6 observation of the data. And whenever you see NA means there's a missing data. There's a missing value in that particular variable of the data. Anyways, now once you are done, you can also look at the structure of the data, okay? So in order to look at the structure of the data, you use the function as this one, that str, and then the data is iris_, okay? So I run it, and then I'm able to see the structure of the data. So there's a structure it print out. So sepal length is a numerical, sepal with numerical, sepal petal length numerical, petal with numerical, species is a character variable, and so on and so forth, okay? So it just gives me generally the structure of the data set, okay? Yeah, so that's how you can actually import also CSV file, which have been demonstrated earlier on. And of course, you can also see the dimension of the data set, which is 50 by 5, which means 50 rows and 5 columns, okay? Or 150 observations and 5 columns. In other words, 150 rows and 5 columns. Okay, so also alternatively, what you can actually do is first of all, you copy the path, okay? So for instance, if I right click on the path data, and then I go to the path, which is under properties, I copy the link under the properties, and then I place it. So over here, we have what is called a function called set working directory, okay? So the set, so we have set, is a set working directory. Now what it does is, it is going to read the data into, oops, let me undo. Now always make sure you put it in quotation, okay? So now it is going to prepare the working directory, the folder. The set working directory is going to take you to the folder in which the data is located, okay? Now again, make sure you change everything to / in the case of using Windows, which I am using Windows. Maybe Mac, you might have to still maintain the \. Okay. So now once you set the working directory, which means now, unlike before, I would have continued. Now remember earlier on, I added the /irish.csv. Now, once you have set the working directory, all what you have to do is, now you are going to use the read.csv. Now, read.csv function is a default function for importing CSV data into R. So you don't need any package for that, okay? So we can also name it as, let's say, our iris data 1, okay? Let's name it as iris data 1. So first of all, we have to run the set directory. Now the directory is ready, okay? So now we are telling R, we are using the c.csv, and we are telling R, go into the, now the directory is ready, read the data iris.csv, okay? And that data, it has header. So we say the header is true, okay? So header equal true, or you can use header equal T, which is the same thing. Let's run it. Now we have run. So now, how do we know the data is ready? We can use the head. Now, if you check under the environment, you can see iris data 1 have now been uploaded or is ready for us to use. So we can say that iris data 1, we can run the header, and now we get the header of the iris data, which is the first 6 observation. Okay. Okay. All right. So now what you can do is also alternatively to use the read.csv, you might not have to set a working directory before you read the CSV file. What you can do is straight away, you can use a function called read.csv, and within the read.csv, we have choose.file, okay? And then you say header equal true, that is if the data is already having headings or column names, okay? So this read.file within the read.csv actually take you to a directory in your computer where you can now go and search for the location of your CSV file, and then you can choose it, and R will now go ahead and then load that data set. So for instance, let us go and load the hints data set, which is also available for you on Canvas. So I can go hence, and then the function is read.csv. Within that function, read.file, comma header equal true. Okay, so let's run that line. So once we've run that line, you see there's a pop-up dialog box. Okay, now I have to go and locate on my PC. Now it takes me directly into the location, so I can go straight away and then select the CSV file, which is the hint data. Assuming it didn't give me, I can actually search for it and then look for the location and select that data. But now I have it already. I go ahead and then open it. So now again, you can see in the environment, the data have been imported. You can find it in the environment, okay? So now I can go ahead and then say, okay, give me the names of the hints data set. So these are all the names of the hints data. And I can ask how to give me the dimension of the data set, which is 3,667. And then the number of variables or columns is what? 70. Okay, so we have 3,865 observation with the number of columns being 70. Okay. Okay, all right. So basically, this is how you can actually import text file data, CSV file data in so many different forms. Now, this one is actually when you have to read the data directly from an online platform, okay, which you can actually also use the read dots table, and then you can actually go and select where the location of the data, okay. Remember, it's using the HTTP. So you select the location of the data, you copy the location, you put it in there, and then you run it, and this will go into the online platform to actually import the data. Okay, so let's skip this part. So now you can also have a data which directly can be copied into SPSS, into RStudio. I say SPSS because I have been using SPSS for a while with my students. Anyway, that's just by the way. So you have, so in a situation whereby you have the data in which you just have to read the data without importing it, you actually use this function, okay? You can use the function which is called temp file in a parenthesis, and then within it, all what you have to do is we have this actually part is actually going to be able to read the data, okay? And you put the data in an inverted commas, and then you say that the data is actually being separated by this double quotation sign, okay? All right, so in this case, you can go ahead and then now you can run this entire data, okay? Okay, so you can run this entire data, and now once you have run it, now you can actually go ahead and then read this data by using, you can go ahead and read this particular data. So let us go ahead and read this data. So now we have this data available to us. So now we have to run a line to be able to read this data, okay? So in order to run a line, the line to read the data, we are saying that now, for instance, just before we even write the second line, which is going to read this particular data we have here, if assuming we run this data, let us run it and see what you see. There's what we have. It means that now we have to write a second line of the code to be able to read this particular read file data, okay? So in order to do that, let's say we said we are naming the data my data underscore file, and then we are going to use read.table to be able to read the data. So the initial file name of that data is what? My.data file. So my.data file, you put it in here. And then we said that header, the data does not have header, okay? So there's no header. So we said that the header is false. But now within the read.table function, we can actually put the column names of the data set, okay? How many columns do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think about 6 columns. So the column names, if we know the column names already, we can now put the columns in which we have it to be in a quotation, ID, gender, race, treatment, day, and then the amount, okay? So those are the column names of the data set. So now we have to now run this data. So what this part of the code is going to actually do is now going to be able to read this my data file, okay? And then include the column names on the data, okay? So let's run this line of the code. So now, if we want to read this data, we can say that my data, let's run this my data, and now we have it, okay? We can now use names. I will talk about the attached data in another presentation, but over here, we just have to, if you want the names of the data, we can just print out the names of the data, okay? Okay, so that's how you can actually use it. And then there's also another sample of reading when you have a read data file, which is a data which you have to copy and paste it and then read the data into R. So all what you have to do is you copy the entire data and then you replace that entire data with over here, okay? So this part of the code remain as it is. This part of the code remain as it is. You copy your file data here, your read data of the data you have here, and then you can now go ahead and run everything, including the option. Okay. So once you have run it again, this is a data which we said I read my data file, which it have a function which is stamp file. Now this part of the code is actually going to read the data, and the data is being kept in the quotation mark, or the entire data counts. And then now we are indicating that the data is being separated by what? The quotation marks. Okay, so now we can go ahead and then write the second line of the code to read the data. And this data has 2 columns, this column and then that column, right? So now all what we are naming, we want to name the data as paper, okay? So we say the data is called paper. We are using the read.data function, and using our data file, which is this data file here. And then we said that header is false because the data does not have header. And then we are having the column names, which is what? We are giving it a column name of X1 and X2 because the data didn't have a column name, but we now want to give it a column name. So now let's run this line. So we can get the names of the data set by running this line, the names. And then we can, if we want to see the data, we can actually run the paper and then see the data. Okay, so this is how you can actually get different type of data. Either you have a text file data, you have CSV data, either you have a read data file, or a data in which you have to copy and paste directly into R. This is how you can actually read the data. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next presentation where I'll be actually talking about visualizing from your data set. Okay, see you.